Yeah, it should definitely.
Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome back to our davening class. And today, after spending quite a bit of time on the blessings of the Shema and the discussion of the angels
Jesus.
and the bracha of Ahavas Olam, which is a bracha which focuses on Hashem's love for us and focuses on Torah, as we spoke about. So now we get to move on to the Shema, and the Shema is um, a to say the least, a central piece of the davening. It's not just a central piece of the davening, it is a central piece of Judaism. So let's talk a little bit about the Shema. Obviously, we'll spend a few weeks on this. And let's get into the idea behind the Shema with a story that's shared, which I think captures a very profound element to the Shema. The story is shared by Viktor Frankl, famously known for his work and his writing Man's Search for Meaning, which was a book, I don't know, published millions of times. And he wrote his approach to, you know, what the human pursuit, the deepest human pursuits in life are. And he describes his experience as a going through the Holocaust, concentration camps. And he talks about in one episode he shares that he was brought to a concentration camp, one of his stops. And as was typically the case, they were told to take off their clothing and they would give them a new set of clothing. And this particular place, they also said, and any items you brought with you, just throw into the center of there's a big pile and you have to throw everything there. Can't hold on to any personal items. And so he did, he did what he was told, but there's one thing he held on to, which were his notes, his lifelong work accumulating his notes and his theories and his philosophies. He had it in a handwritten notebook.
Was he a philosopher?
And he was a psychologist. He was and a writer.
Oh,
So he held on to that and he put everything else in the middle.
okay.
And then a Nazi officer turns to him and says, "Everything goes into the pot." So he said to the officer, he started pleading. He said, "Look, this is my personal notes. There's obviously zero danger, zero concern. There's also zero value of this to anyone other than me. It's just notebooks. Do you mind if I hold on to my notebook?" And the way I heard it, he says, I thought I saw a glint of compassion for a moment, but then that was immediately removed. And I was told by this officer, throw it into the pile or I'll shoot you on the spot. So he didn't have a choice. Obviously, he threw it in. And he says that was up to that point at least, that was the worst moment of the war. He had been through a lot. He had been through pain and loss. But when that happened, it was almost as if his whole life's effort, his whole identity was being thrown away for no reason. No reason. And he said it was a devastating blow. And he was somewhat like in a haze. And they gave him another set of clothing. No idea where it's from, who wore it before him. But as he put on the clothing, he then placed his hand into his pocket and he realized there's a little piece of paper folded up in the pocket. So he took it out and he opened it. And on the paper, there was just one statement. And that statement was, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is God, the Lord is one. Which had been written by, he never knew, never did know, whoever it was that wore the clothing before. And he said that this statement, this piece of paper, he felt was almost like a divine message responding to his pain and anger. And it's almost as if God was saying, you think that you've lost everything. You think that because you've had to give up your notes and your efforts, you've lost everything, every part of who you are. But the truth is, the essence of who you are is still there. The essence of who you are can never be taken away. The essence of a Jew is the ability to say Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem. That's the essence of a Jew, and that can never be taken away, even as we lose other elements. That is who we are. And he said it gave him great comfort, great strength to know that the Shema still remain. So what is it that is so profound about the Shema? What makes the Shema so unique? So I want to share a few ideas today, and again, we will continue it next week as we get into the words of the Shema. But I want to share maybe some of the technical ideas of the Shema, and then move on to the deeper ideas behind it. So firstly, Shema is the only prayer which is an obligation to say every single day. In fact, twice a day, every morning and every night. And that's the word I say that. And that is, V'hayu advarim ha'ela. These words shall be, after we say, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, we say, V'hayu advarim ha'ela. This is from the Torah portion of Eschana, we read a few weeks ago. These words shall be, Ala Vavecha, on your heart, and you say, B'shach B'cha u'v'kumecha. You should say that when you awake and when you go to sleep. So you're saying it's 3 times. So even though there is a custom to say the 3rd time, you're talking about before we go to sleep, Krish Mashal Amita. But that's not a Torah obligation. That's a custom. No. The Torah obligation is morning and night. The Shema, Kriya Shema She'al Hamita, which we also say, again, it's typically said 3 times, or even more if in the morning Karbanos we say Shema again. But the 3rd time, which is a custom, and that is the Shema by night is meant to be a form of divine protection against negative forces at night. Okay. So that's the nighttime Shema.
Actually, you're right.
But the Shema prayer is the one prayer which we are obligated to say morning and night every single day. Okay. Every other part of the davening has been established and developed. So the rest of davening, I don't want to suggest that all of davening is rabbinic, because there is a discussion about the obligation of prayer every day. There are opinions which say that prayer every day is the oraisa, is a Torah obligation, but there's no specific prayer which one is obligated to say. So one may be obligated to pray every single day, but you can fulfill that prayer without necessarily saying the words of the davening or the Amidah. So the prayer that is, it could be that when you say the Shemona Esrei, you're also fulfilling a Torah obligation, but that's different than saying you are obligated to say the Shemona Esrei every day. By all accounts, there's no Torah obligation to recite the Shemona Esrei every day. There may be a Torah obligation to pray every day, but that can be accomplished with various different prayers, maybe even a personal prayer. The only prayer which the words of that prayer are obligated to be recited every single day is the Shema. And the Shema has been recited every single day, and I often quote this because I think it's very profound. When you say the Shema, I think one of the ideas to meditate upon is the fact that these words have been recited every single day by thousands or millions of people for over 3,000 years, over 3,300 years. No other prayers like that. So when one recites the Shema, aside from what we're going to get to about the relationship with Hashem that we're talking about, there's also a relationship with the Jewish people throughout history, that this has been recited every single day. And that's why the Shema is probably the most famous prayer, the most famous line that the Jewish people have. I was listening to a Torah class on the topic of the Shema. Someone shared there's so many stories about the Shema, about just the line of the Shema. But one story that was shared was about during World War II, there was a Jewish Russian officer, and then the platoon, I guess, they were asked to if someone would volunteer for a particularly dangerous role, and that would require them to go behind enemy German lines. And most people, no one wanted to do it because it was close to a death sentence. There was one man, one soldier, with a deep sense of patriotism, and he said, "I'll do it." He volunteered. He says, "I'll go." Well, he was called into the general's office, and the general looked at him. He expected some sort of tremendous compliment. The general looked at him and said, "You're a spy, and have you killed for being a spy?" He says, "Why are you saying I'm a spy?" He says, "Because it doesn't make sense for any soldier to volunteer for this role. This role is so dangerous that the only person who would volunteer is someone who's actually not worried. He's not scared of going behind enemy lines. And the only reason you wouldn't be scared is because you're a spy. So he says, I'm going to have you killed for being a spy. The officer couldn't believe it. I mean, he had a moment ago, he had made the ultimate commitment to his country. And now he was being accused. And in the Russian army, in the Russian system, if a general accused you, so then that was it. He was the witness, the judge, the ruler, and he would be killed a few moments later. So he was scrambling to try to defend himself. And he said, I can't be a spy, I'm Jewish. Which Jew would be a spy for the Nazi Germans? The general looked at him and says, really, you're a Jew? I had no idea. He says, tell me something Jewish. If you're Jewish, say something Jewish. So what does a Jew respond when he says told to say something Jewish? He responded by reciting the Shema. And he says, Shema, Yisrael, Hashem, Elokeinu. And then before he even finished, the general looked at him and responded, and he said, Hashem Echad.
Oh.
Hashem Echad. And he was let go. He was let off. I guess he went on that mission. But the declaration of Shema Yisrael has become not just a moment of obligatory prayer every day, but the Shema Yisrael contains within it in many ways, some of the essential, perhaps the most essential idea of Judaism, which is why it has to be recited every day. And why it's recited every day, every morning, and every evening. Share different ideas about the different recitation of the Shema. So the Shema is obligated to be recited morning and evening. There's a very famous disagreement between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel about the words about when you're obligated to say the Shema. So the words we say in the Kriya Shema every day are that you should recite these words b'shachbecha uvekumecha, which means b'shachbecha means when you lay down, uvekumecha means when you stand up. So in the Mishnah, you have Beis Shammai. This may be maybe the most famous disagreement between Beis Shammai and Hillel. They have many disagreements in the Talmud. This may be the most, certainly from the most famous disagreements between them. And Beis Shammai says, "B'shachbacha u'kumecha," when you lay down, when you stand up, says Beis Shammai, that means literally, and that is that the evening Shema should be recited when you are laying down, and the morning Shema should be recited when you stand up. And therefore, it's literally talking about your how you recite the Shema as to the position of your body. Say it as you are laying down, and saying as you are standing up. And Beis Hillel says it's not referring to the position of the body; it's referring to the time of day. So when you lay down, it refers to the time of day that people typically go to sleep, and when you stand up, is referring to the time of day that people typically people wake up. The Gemara gets into a long discussion what those times are. What is the time that people typically go to sleep? And in the olden days, it was different than it is nowadays, because in the olden days, it was very much based on the sun, that when the sun goes down, and therefore it's dark in the world, so all you can do is go to sleep. And when the sun rises, so there's light, so that's the time to wake up. They were not dependent on sunlight for light, Baruch Hashem. But ultimately, that's what it goes based on. So Beis Shammai still have this argument. And the Gemara says the halacha follows Beis Hillel, that it's not referring to the position of the body, but rather the time of day. And the Gemara speaks very strongly about this, that once we follow Beis Hillel, then it's absolutely, that is the Torah law. And the Gemara goes so far as to say, is there was someone who wanted to say, you know what, I'll fulfill both. I'll fulfill both. I'll do it at the time of day that Beis Hillel says, and I'll do it with the position of the body, and I'll try to accommodate Beis Shammai as well. And he says that one time I was doing the nighttime of the Shema, and I was doing it in this unique way that I was following Beis Hillel in the timing, and Beis Shammai in the body's position, And he says, I was traveling, and because of somehow, it says, my life was put in danger at that moment. Maybe there was a roadside attack, and because I was distracted because of the way I was saying the Shema, my life was in danger, and I survived. And the Gemara says you had every right to lose your life. You basically forfeited your life. Why? What did he do? Because the Gemara says because you chose to pursue the opinion of Beis Shammai, even though the opinion is like Beis Hillel. And I think the Gemara is teaching a very profound lesson here. I know it's not so much connected to the Shema. It happens to be about the Shema. It's not so much about the connection to the Shema, but it's a very profound idea, which is that the process of halacha in which the sages ruled according to one opinion or another, once the halacha is established, which in this case, following Beis Hillel of what the meaning of B'shach b'chav kumecha is, then one who deviates from it is deviating from Torah entirely. And it's a severe violation of Torah. Even though in this situation, by the way, he wasn't even violating Torah at all. He wasn't looking to reject the opinion of Beis Hillel. He was saying, but alongside Beis Hillel, I'll also follow Beis Shammai. So he just said that's a terrible mistake, despite it's coming from good intention. It's a terrible mistake. Because Torah is Torah, and the halacha of Torah becomes God's will. And therefore becomes God's will that you follow the opinion of Beis Hillel. And it violates God's will when one follows the opinion of Beis Shammai. God forbid to suggest Beis Shammai was intended against Hashem. Beis Shammai was the ultimate tzaddik, and he was describing a pathway to Hashem as well. But the halacha follows Beis Hillel, and one has to be 100% committed to that. Anyway, that's the idea of the Shema that is recited in the morning and the evening. And the Maharal, in his commentary on prayer, points out that the idea of morning and evening, which we have, is true about the Shema, is true about prayer. The truth is, one should try to, it says also when it comes to Torah, that there's this idea of studying Torah in the morning and the evening. And the morning and the evening, the Gemara talks about the obligation of Torah, where it says, "V'higisa ba'yom v'layla," you should toil in Torah morning and night. And there's different understandings of it. The simple meaning of you should toil in Torah morning and night means that a person is obligated to study Torah all the time. All the time one is obligated to study Torah. And even if a person has to work to earn a living, so okay, so you work a little bit, you earn a living, and then the rest of the time you study Torah. But what about those who cannot have that level of Torah study? Can I fulfill the mitzvah of Torah study without that level of commitment? So the Talmud says, for someone who works, someone who has a livelihood, then one can fulfill the mitzvah of Torah study with Perek Echad Shachris and Perek Echad Arvis, which literally means one chapter in the morning and one chapter at night. So again, this idea of Torah study morning and night, which is kind of strange. What's the significance of one chapter in the morning and one chapter at night? What about 3 chapters in the middle of the day? Or if it's about 2 chapters, so just study 2 chapters of the Torah a day. In almost every other topic of area of study, there's zero emphasis on when you study. Think about any area. You're somebody who's working hard to study medicine or science or mathematics or history. Rarely, if ever, will one be told when to study. You have to put in, my daughter just passed her driving test, Mazel tov. So she had to put in however many hours, 45, 50 hours of driving, 50 hours of study. That's it. All that matters is the amount of time you put in. You would think when it comes to the Torah or the prayers, just this is the amount of time of Torah study you have to do to fulfill one's obligation. This is the amount of prayer one should do to fulfill one's obligation. And yet both with regards to the Shema and with regards to the Torah study, there's this idea that it has to be every morning and every night. Shema has to be recited in the morning and the night. Torah should be studied Perek Echad Shachas, Perek Echad Arvis. Once at least a portion of Torah by day and a portion of Torah by night. And why is that? So I say just point out. On a simple level, it's because a person has to, the idea of Torah and Shema for that matter is not just accumulating. It's not just accumulating information, but rather it's about filling one's life with a certain energy, with a certain holiness. And therefore we are taught that in Judaism, we are taught that there's units of time. Every morning is its own unit of time, and nighttime is a unit of time. And therefore, you have to fill every unit of time with holiness. And that holiness includes Torah and prayer. So that every unit of time, every 12 hours, even when you think of the creation of heaven and earth, we have the creation of heaven and earth. You have Vayi Erev, Vayi Boker. It doesn't say God created day number one, 24 hours, day number one. It says God created nighttime, and then God created day. And that was day number one. So you have night and day. They're two different units. On the one hand, we do have to say that they are one halachic day. But very clearly, from the beginning of creation, you have a unit of night and a unit of daytime. It even talks about again, there's a lot of Kabbalah about this, about the 12 hours of night and the 12 hours of day. Halachically, every night has 12 hours and every day has 12 hours, even in the summertime where the day is longer, in the wintertime where the night is longer, but each one is divided into 12. And there's a name of God which is associated, there's a combination of the letters of God's name. God's name is Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey. And that can make up into 12 different, there's 12 different combinations of the Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey. 12 different ways those letters can be combined. And those 12 different combinations are the 12 divine energies for every hour. And there's the 12 hours of the day and 12 hours of the night. So again, you have this idea of there's a certain energy in the day, a certain energy in the night. And therefore, every day a person has to study Torah, and every night a person has to study Torah. Because you have to fill that unit of time. Again, if it was just about accumulating information, it would make no difference when. Make no difference. If let's say you say, I'm going to study 12 hours for the week, so I'll take a 12-hour period of time on Sunday, and I'll do 12 hours straight. And arguably, if you do that, you'll actually gain more Torah. I don't know why I said 12. I meant to say 14. I'll say you take 14 hours straight. Sunday, I'll study from 8 a.m. till 10 p.m. Torah study straight, undistracted. Arguably, you'll have more Torah study than if you divide it an hour every morning, an hour every night. Right? Because it's undistracted, 14 hours straight. Now, to study Torah undistracted 14 hours straight is a tremendous accomplishment. I encourage it if you're able to do it. But one does not fulfill the Torah obligation as if one has done an hour Sunday morning, an hour Sunday night, an hour Monday morning, an hour Monday night. So the actual accumulation of Torah may be less, but the Torah obligation of Torah is fulfilled. And the same is with the Shema. The Shema is such an essential part of life as a Jew, that one has to fill every unit of time with the recitation of the Shema. Every morning and every evening has to be filled with the recitation of the Shema. Interestingly, the obligation of prayer is not every morning and every night, midoraisa. The Torah obligation of prayer is only morning and afternoon. Shachris and Mincha is a Torah obligation. Ma'ariv, the nighttime prayer, is actually rabbinic. So it's interesting that prayer is not a morning and nighttime obligation. Prayer is a daytime obligation. Shema and Torah study is morning and night. But we'll take this one level deeper. This will conclude. And that is that morning and night is more than just a unit in time. Morning and night represents two realities. And that is the morning represents light, clarity, goodness. And night represents darkness, mystery, confusion. That's night. Again, very simply put, when you walk outside in the daylight, you see everything. You see things for what they are. You see the truth of how things are. Night, when you walk outside, you don't see. Especially if you don't have light. So then you're walking in the night, you're confused, and you could bump into things. You don't know where things are at. You don't know where you are at times. If one stops really in the middle of the night, where there's no light, then one is confused. And one doesn't know where they're at. They don't know what's coming, where they're going to. So that night, morning and night, symbolizes the idea of truth and clarity and goodness, which is day, where I understand God's ways, where I understand what's going on around me, where I understand where I am and where I'm going. It all makes sense. And nighttime represents when nothing makes sense. And obviously, you have the darkest moments of night, the brightest moments of day. You have a lot of levels in between, like life. Life is just like that. You have the clarity, there's moments of clarity and certainty. There's moments of absolute confusion and pain and darkness. And then there's all sorts of levels in between. So the recitation of the Shema in the morning and the recitation of the Shema at night is the declaration of the faith in Hashem. And we'll talk more about what the actual declaration is. But that declaration, that faith, that commitment to Hashem is recited in the midst of day when things are good, and often people forget about Hashem in those moments. When everything is going well, when everything is clear, when everything is on cruise control, and it all seems perfect. Nonetheless, pause to remember the unity of Hashem, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. That's the obligation during the day. And then there's the nighttime obligation. And that is when things are dark and confusing, where I don't understand. In fact, Chassidus talks a lot about how evil really is just the obscuring of truth. The obscuring of truth is really essentially what evil is. We don't understand. Truth is we can't see. We don't see God's ways. Bad things seem to be happening to good people. Good things happening to bad people. That's night. And it can be very dark night. And there too we recite Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. We recite and connect to the oneness and the absolute oneness of Hashem as well. So that's the deeper idea. Maral speaks about this, the deeper idea behind the recitation of the Shema, morning and night. All right, we'll stop here, and we will continue, God willing, next Sunday, continuing the topic of the Shema.
Thank you. Good luck.
Good luck.